Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. So this is Romaric, CEO and co-founder of Qovery. So happy to be here and being your host today. So as always, we are going just to wait a few seconds, like a few minutes, to see if more people are joining this session. So to talk about end-to-end testing and ephemeral environments, how you can just combine all of that into one pipeline. So that's the purpose. And this session will be a live session, not coding session because everything is prepared, but at least I will detail every single part, and I will make sure that you understand and you get the benefits of that session. So yeah. So here you go. It's good to see you. All right. So we'll see how many people we have today. All back from vacations, mostly in Europe. So people coming from Europe, they spend the whole August in vacation. So now it's September. We see people coming back from PTO, so that's great. All right. So let's wait just like a few more seconds and then we can start. All right. Okay, so let's go. Otherwise, we'll not have enough time to detail how to build an end-to-end ephemeral testing environment. So as I mentioned, I'm a Romaric, CEO and co-founder of Qovery, and today I'm going just to show you how you can build a full testing and end-to-end testing environment, a pipeline with ephemeral environment mostly. Okay, so I will quickly introduce like both concepts. So obviously I know and I imagine that most of people, they know what is end-to-end test. Okay, so I will just show you a quick diagram that I have where you can just like define, and you can see what's like end-to-end test and ephemeral environments. Okay, so the goal and the purpose of that session is really to jump into the full pipeline. So all the GitHub Actions stuff, how you can just combine GitHub Actions with Qovery, with K6 to run the test and see how it works and see all the benefits of all of that. Okay, so this is exactly what we are going to just describe. So not to build already today because it has already been done, but the goal is to just describe all those different steps. And here, as I mentioned, the tools that we're using is GitHub Actions. Okay, so Docker obviously, because we'll build our application into our pipeline and we'll push that into a container registry. And we'll deploy like these applications with the full environment with Qovery. Then from that, so we'll run all our tests inside our the ephemeral environment with a K6. So I will show you the configurations of all those elements. Okay, I assume in that sessions that you already know what is GitHub Actions, obviously. So it's a CI/CD tool. K6, I don't expect you knowing that, but I will just quickly describe that. And I will explain, obviously, what's Qovery will plug like all the tools together. So we have the chance just to get into the configuration. I just wanted to tell you that this session is basically exactly what I did inside this article. Okay, so I just published an article last week to talk about this, like how to build those end-to-end testing ephemeral environments. So you can find like all the steps that you. So it's a step-by-step guide that you can follow. where I describe everything in detail. So how to build that kind of pipeline for your own purpose. Okay, you even have access to the application code, so everything. So that's exactly what we are going to do. And since I'm already on that page, so just to introduce quickly the end-to-end test. So basically, end-to-end testing is how can we just test like the full pipeline, so the full elements, like all the elements and the components that we have to make sure that the application at the end works. And this includes basically the code, obviously, so but also the different services. Okay, so probably unit test. Inside your application code, you will run the test to just validate the logic, internal logic of your applications. Then you have the integration test where you plug the stuff all together and you start to have interactions between like different components. And you have the end-to-end test where you are really testing like the full behavior of your applications. So with the databases and all the different components. And in this diagram, so I get the feedback that UI test is part of the end-to-end test, right? Yes, it's the case, but here's just to illustrate, when you get to the point where you test the UI, it's even more complex than just end-to-end test, but it's obviously could be part of the end-to-end test, okay? In this, so if I go back to my slides, so in this scenario, what we have is basically we'll test a to-do application. Okay, so we have a to-do application that is written in Java, and this application is connected to a Postgres database. So you will see that inside ephemeral environment, what we'll do is that we get those two elements working all together in a fully isolation, okay? And we'll run our test on that application that is connected to the database. Why I wanted to just show you that, because the most complex part of running end-to-end test with ephemeral environment is to spin up this environment, to spin up correctly, configuring properly like all the applications. And obviously the most complex are like the database, so spinning up a database and the applications that are connected to this database, okay? So, but here I focus, so I just added the two elements, so this Java applications and the Postgres database, but if you want to add more services, it's exactly the same. So there is no difference, okay? So that's what we are going to do. So this is the flow that will be executed basically when we open a pull request, okay? So we'll open a pull request, and what we want is just triggering the full pipeline. So we want to build the image, push that into a container registry, so AWS ECR, and then trigger Qovery to create an ephemeral environment based on what we call a blueprint environment, base environment. I will show you all of that. And then we'll execute. So we have like another GitHub workflow, GitHub Actions workflow that will execute a case 6, and will take so the URL of the applications that we expose in our ephemeral environments to run all those queries. And the load tests that we are going to do are done via HTTP, because with our ephemeral environment, what we will get is external endpoints to connect to the application, okay? The second workflow is that one, because we are talking about ephemeral environment, and that's the whole purpose. Ephemeral means that we spin up the environment when it's needed, okay? And we tear down the environment when it's no longer needed, okay? To save resources, money, and all of that. That's the whole purpose. And here, what we have as a flow is that when the tests are over, or just the pull request is over, we can close or merge the pull request, and what will trigger is a termination workflow on GitHub Actions to delete just the ephemeral environment that is uncovered. So in just one command, Qovery will take care of dropping all the elements, the resources, and releasing all of them, okay? So that's basically what we are going to do. All right, so yeah, as I mentioned, I just added one more slide. So for the ephemeral environment, just to make sure that we are all on the same page, the difference between ephemeral environment and static environment is basically a static environment is running forever. Okay, so you have one environment, the staging environment. In most companies, it's a long-living environment. Okay, here with the concept of ephemeral environment, you just spin up the same environment. Okay, just the time that you need, and then you can tear down. The benefits here is that you can create many in parallel, many ephemeral environments. So for every single pull request, for instance, that you create, and you can just run independently all the tests that you need inside those ephemeral environments. Okay, so yeah. Just quick mention, ephemeral environment is also named sometimes a preview environment. You have a dynamic environment. So you can have also deploy preview, or if you're coming from the HeroQ world, you have review apps as well. Okay, all of them, they are the same concept actually. It's just the ability to spin up and tear down an environment when it's only needed. All right, super. All good. So let's jump into the demo of all of that. I will first show you that I've prepared. So I'm inside Qovery, inside what we call a blueprint environment. So I'm going just to zoom a bit, then you can better see. So maybe I'm going just to switch to something like that. It's pain because we don't see the other thing, but it's going to be fine. So basically, you have here a blueprint environment. This blueprint environment is my base environment. It's the environments that I will use to clone, to create the ephemeral environments that I need, okay? So it's composed of my Postgres database, as I mentioned. So this is my Postgres database, no problem. It's a version 15. And I have my to-do app, so which is a Java application, okay? So everything is well configured. I have the environment variables to connect to the database, and it's working properly. I can check that it's working properly like this. Hey, this is magic. So you see, my application is running. I can add new items if I want. Hey, let's work in 1 hour. And it works, okay? So everything works well. It's connecting to the database, and so on and so forth. This application is a containerized application. Okay, so it's a containerized applications that I'm pulling from my ECR container registry. So it's all set up. Okay, I don't need to run that environment actually. It's just for the demo purpose here to show you that the configuration is working properly. But once it's done, actually what I can do, I can just stop my environment. So now I'm stopping this environment because it's only used as a template, basically. Okay. So if I go now to GitHub Actions, so to my repository, my to-do application, what I can see is that I've created my GitHub workflow files. Okay, so this is my application. It's a Java application. I have a Docker file that is at the root of this project that is used to build the application. There is nothing really special here. I have my GitHub Actions workflows. So all my pipelines that are defined here, okay, will describe all of them. Then we can see that we have done properly and we are just executing a bunch of commands, all right? And we have a E2E folder where we have our E2E.js script. So this script is used by K6, okay? So it's to run my load test, HTTP load test. I will describe that afterwards, but you can see in one repository, I have everything that I need. In the case where you have an environment with multiple applications coming from different repositories, it doesn't change anything because Qovery knows how to manage that. You can add as many applications as you want. They can come from different Git, even provider, but also different repository. It doesn't make any difference for Qovery, okay? But here for the demo, we are just focusing on one application and one database, okay? So if I go back here, let's say, and feel free just to ask all your question. Okay, it's a demo, but feel free just to ask all your question. So the first step for me is just to, we have seen that we have prepared the blueprint environment. It's working properly. So it's basically just adding the application, the database. So I can just show you maybe this part. You can add the database like this. So that's what I did. I did just a Postgres database in container mode and not in manage mode. Okay, so container mode is just a container, Postgres container that is pinned up on my Kubernetes cluster, because under the hood, Qovery runs on a Kubernetes cluster with a block storage that is attached for the data. Okay, I can choose Postgres, the version 15 here, and I want to say that my database, I just want to make it privately accessible, so not exposed on the internet, right? So I can continue, set the CPU, the RAM, the storage, and all of that. And I've created the database, okay? For the application, it's the same that has been done. I've just done that. So create an application. I name it like a to-do application. I've picked the application not from Git in that case, because we are going to use GitHub Actions to build the image and then use the image that we push in ECR to be deployed. So then from that, we don't need to rebuild twice the same image. So here I've chosen container registry. Okay, I've picked one of my registry, and then I given the name of the image and the tag. Okay, so here I can just say, for instance, it's to do app. I can just give a fake number just to show you the steps. Then we set the CPU, the RAM, the number of instances. We don't need to have too many. It really depends if we want to test the scalability of our application. We can add more applications, no problem. And we have indicated the port of our application. Okay, so basically saying that, hey, we want to expose over HTTP our application. And then from that, we were able just to continue and create the application. And then Qovery takes care of managing the overall things, configuring the ingress controllers, load balancer, TLS, certificate, and blah, blah, blah. All right. So our application was created. And what I did is just basically creating the environment variable, so the aliases, because Qovery inject what we call built-in environment variables when you create resources like databases inside an environment. So you see here, for instance, the credentials, the connection string, and all of that has been injected. And because I'm using like a specific name inside my application, I've just created the variables that I needed, so the aliases, on top of those built-in variables to just be able to connect properly to the service. So that's why we have Quarkus, data source username, data source password, Postgres host, Postgres DB name, and so on and so forth. So my application works properly. And once it's done, then our blueprint environment is ready to be used, basically. Okay. Right. Super. So we can move on. And we can move to the second step. So the second step, if we go back to our, you remember, so if we go back here, our second step is to build the application. So when we open a pull request, we want to trigger the end-to-end workflow, so build the container image, okay, and push that container image into ECR. All right. So super easy. So if we go now to our GitHub workflow, so what we have this workflow, so the build and push image, okay? So, so just to describe that, there is nothing really special here. If you're already familiar to build your container image with your pipeline, it works exactly the same way here. So we are just basically declaring multiple jobs. So we have a job that is run unit test, but actually it's not running anything, but you can put your unit test before triggering the launch of the full pipeline. I'm building and pushing the container image into that job. Okay, so here what I'm doing is just basically I have multiple steps where I check out the code, I build the image. Okay, so I set the credentials. So I've declared, obviously, the credential of my ECR container registry as a secret. So I have the access key ID and the secret access key inside a GitHub action, okay? So I can access it. So I log in, and then from that, I can just basically build my image, tag it, and then push it inside my container registry, okay? So that's the step that you need just to follow. Those steps, so once it's done, actually what you have to do, so the extra step, so here, in that case, actually I'm using a container registry that has been created by Qovery. But if you're using another container registry, Qovery supports like multiple container registry. When you push your image into your container registry, you can just basically declare that container registry inside a Qovery. Okay, so you can basically say that you want to use your container, those container registry. So you have multiple, you see, sources. So you can, here in my case, I'm using ECR and it's a private container registry. Okay, I just need to fill out those information, and then I can connect and pull the images directly from Qovery to deploy them, right? So that's as easy. Right, so if I go back now to our diagram, we have done so the container, so we have built the container, we have pushed the image into the container registry. Now what we need to do is the most interesting one, is creating this ephemeral environment, right? So this ephemeral environment, so the way that we create that, because we have the blueprint that is available, what we just need to do is this. So I will skip this part because I will explain what I did. I did like some stuff to provide information from the environment inside the pull request. Okay, I will go back to that one, and I will show you the final result. Obviously, we'll do it together. But basically, what we have done is that I created a job that is create end-to-end environment, right? So here, to integrate GitHub Actions with Qovery, it's as simple actually as downloading the CLI, because Qovery provides a CLI interface, and executing a bunch of commands via the CLI interface. That's it. One feature that we have with Qovery is the clone feature. So you can clone an environment, and that's exactly what we are doing here. We are executing that command, okay? So we have downloaded the CLI, okay? And here, what we do is that we clone our blueprint environment. That's the purpose, okay? In just one command, we clone the blueprint environment. Then we update the container image, okay? So we change the tag of that image, okay? So the tag is the new tag that we want to use, obviously. And what we do is that we just deploy the full environment. It's not the applications that we deploy, but it's the full environment. I will show you manually what looks like those all steps, and you will understand. And here at the end, what we do is that once it's done, then we write down inside the pull request, actually, the full information of that environment. I will show you the result. But here, what's interesting is that Qovery with the CLI, because we know our customers, users are integrating the CLI into their pipeline, what you can do is just adding this minus a W, which is the wait. So the Qovery environment deploy command will wait until the end. If it succeeds, then it returns 0. If it fails, then it returns 1. Okay, and you get the error message as well, right? So let me show you how does that work, manually speaking. So if I reproduce exactly the same steps via the CLI, but from the interface, it looks like this. Cloning the environment, so I'm inside the blueprint environment. What I do is that I clone the environment. The environment name, actually, if I go here, is going to be the name of the pull request. Okay, so we give the name of the pull request as the environment name. You see, so GitHub head ref. So that's the name. So here, if it's, let's say, fit billing v2, okay, that will be the name of the new environment. Then Qovery will create, so attribute that environment to one cluster. Okay, you can have multiple clusters. I'm not going to get into the details because that's not the purpose. Okay, and we'll set like a type to that environment. So that's basically what looks like the flow. So we have created in just one click here, you see, a new environment. We have cloned the blueprint and created the fit/bidding v2 environment. And what happens, so the second action is that one. We change the version of our container, basically. So here what we do is that from the CLI, we change this, okay, by another tag. Then we save that, okay? Once it's changed, then what we do is that we deploy the environment. So we don't deploy each services independently. Actually, what we do is that we deploy the full environment. Let me explain why. Because with Qovery, what you can do is that you can describe your pipeline, okay? You can have an order of execution, and you can declare a pipeline with stages and steps. So we keep the order of execution when you deploy the full pipeline, okay, the full environment. I can show you a much more complex environment. So for instance, this environment is composed of 13 services, okay? And there is like a specific order of execution. When I trigger deploy of this environment, we keep the execution order of the full pipeline, you see? So if we have multiple databases, multiple services, you need to execute a seed script for your database and all of that, you can do and order all those elements inside the Qovery pipeline, basically. So that's why it's important just to deploy and trigger the deployment from the environment. So I go back to my testing environment, and I'm going to click here on deploy, okay? And you see what's happening. It's deployment queued, and we'll see the full pipeline, so the full elements deployed. Okay. I have one question. Instead of GitHub, I'm guessing you could use a Qovery pipeline instead. Yes, for the applications that you declare inside Qovery. So Qovery is really a tool to manage your environment. So let's say you want to just manage different services and components via Qovery, then yes, you're better using like the Qovery pipeline. Now, it's really different purpose. It really depends on what you want to put inside GitHub and what you want to put inside Qovery, basically, yes. But here, what we have is just by the concept of pipeline, where you can just put, when you have put your different services and components, if you have like different scripts that you want to execute in a specific order, yes, you can use the Qovery pipeline for that. Yeah. Yes. So thanks for asking that, by the way. So we have our database, so that is ready now. And we have our application to the app that is in deployment and going to be live in just a few moments. You see? So this is the deployment logs that we are seeing. And in a few moments, so it's pulling the image, you see? So mirroring the image from the container registry, pulling the image, and now it has been successfully pulled, and it's going to be deployed, and we'll be able to watch the deployment, the live logs of the application, I'm pretty sure, in just a few minutes. So you see, we have access to the logs also of the application. So it's the Quarkus application, it's starting properly, and we'll have like a green light when the application is ready, basically. So we can get access to this application. It's not there yet because we are doing some checks, and it's based on the health checks that are being declared. But here it's just a TCP liveness and readiness prop that are just set up, so it's good. Okay, it's green now. So I can open, so you see the URL that is provided by Qovery, it's a dedicated URL for that service. Okay, so I can open that one, and what we see, you see, we have our application. Okay, hey, this is test. And it works, basically, okay? So what I can do, So that's exactly what the workflow is going to do. So spinning up this new environment, then get the URL that is provided by Qovery to pass this information to the K6 script that is going to do some load testing. Once the load testing stuff has been done, then what will happen is we'll just drop the environment. So this environment will be deleted exactly this way by clicking on delete, and boom. You see? So now Qovery is going to release the resources from that service. There is one thing that I want just to add before going back to the things. Let's say you have a complex environment, and instead of cloning the full environment with the database, you want to mutualize the database and the other services. That's a question that we have quite often from our customers, because spinning up a new environment takes time and costs money, obviously. And you maybe want just to test some stuff that are not changing the database schema and touching like the other components. So this is where you can also clone not the environment, but just the service. You see, so for instance here, by the CLI, you can do that as well. But if you want to clone the service and say that this to-do app is to-do app fit billing v2, like this, we have some customer exactly doing that. You can just clone the service itself, you see? So the service is cloned and is completely independent from the other one. You get also a dedicated URL for that service. And this service is going to connect to the same database. So it's very powerful, versatile. You can really configure that the way that you want. And here, the benefit is that the application is going to be spin up very fast compared to the full environment. And you can mutualize resources, so which means as well that you will pay less at the end of the day, right? So let's delete it because I'm going to use that environment. It's my blueprint environment, okay? And let's go back to our flow. So, okay, we have created the testing environment, the ephemeral environment. That's exactly what we have done. So we are pulling the image from the container registry. It's automatically done by Qovery. That's great. And what we want now is passing the information of the URL from the to-do app to K6, to execute K6. So it's GitHub Actions actually that is going to execute K6 to run the test, okay? So what we are going to do here is running this job. So we have the run end-to-end test, basically. And inside this job, what we are doing is just basically same. So I didn't optimize too much here just to make it simple, but we are downloading again the Qovery CLI, okay, because we want to give the URL of the service to the K6 script, okay. So what we are doing is also downloading K6 and installing K6 inside this job. And we are going to just get the API domain, so the URL that we are going to use, so API host, to run the test. And we are going just to execute the K6 command. So basically what we are doing is just executing K6. So no color is just for the output inside this pipeline, and running that against the URL that is provided by Qovery for this to-do application inside the ephemeral environment. So we run the scripts so that I described end-to-end .js. And once it's done, then we print the report. So we just pass the information. So we'll print the report, the output of the end-to-end test. Okay. So let me show you. So let's say that I'm going to execute that. So let's say that I'm going to do a new pull request. So I'm going to change something, like a really dumb thing. Let's say that I want to let's say I add like one more line here. Okay, we don't really care actually. Okay, so I'm going to create a new branch for that. It's fit core add new line. Okay, so that's the name of my branch. Hey, this is commit. That's what happened here. Okay, and I'm going to create a new branch. Okay, so here I can create a pull request and say, hey, this is new voilà, branch with a dump commit, and I can create just basically the pull request. Okay, so take a look. What's going to happen here? So first, you see, we have two scripts, two workflows that are executed. Okay, so those are GitHub workflows. So we have the init workflow, and we have the build workflow that is executed. Okay, so we build the image, and we are going to push this image, the container image, inside the container registry. We have also the unit test job that is executed, but this one is actually empty, so that's why it's green. You see something, it's quite interesting here. We have this message that is displayed. So actually, I use a GitHub Actions a plugin to add those informations, so inside the pull request. And that's exactly what we are going to do, adding more information about the end-to-end testing environment, providing the URL inside the workflow. So it's fully automatic. So what I'm saying here is you have to add end-to-end, so E2E label inside this pull request to trigger the end-to-end testing environment. Actually, what I did is that I didn't want it, and our users, most of the time, they want to keep the control of whenever they want to spin up the environment, the end-to-end testing environment. And for that, a good practice with GitHub Action is using the labels, for instance. So if you add this label, so I'm going to show you the flow, but basically by adding this label, what I'm going to do is just triggering the creation of the end-to-end testing environment with Qovery and the run of those end-to-end testing stuff. So because if you are opening just a dumb pull request where you're changing a simple file that doesn't have like any relations with the application, you don't want to trigger like automatically the end-to-end testing environment. So that's why we have this. So I'm going to show you. So here we have our test. So our build, everything is green. So our build, our image is pushed into the container registry. And here I'm going to add this label. But before, I want to show you that here, if I go back to Qovery, you see the blueprint environment. It's the only environment that is created. Okay, by adding that, this label, we'll see a new environment that will be spun up. So fingers crossed, live demos. How? So by adding this label, now we have triggered, oh, that's great. We have the create end-to-end environment job that is executed. So we can watch this and we'll see that, yes, my environment is in deployment already. So if I go here, oh, you see, we have our environment that is created. Yes, that's great. And if you look at this environment, so in the deployment state, okay, so the database, as I mentioned, is in deployment state, then it's going to be the application. And here, the tag of the image, so you see it's finishing with 226. Okay, 226. If we look at the blueprint, here, it's not 226. It's 4E4. You see, so it has been updated with the new version. So it's really a new environment where we are going to be able to test all of that. So my database is good now. Okay, so that's great. And now it's the application that is in deployment mode. And what will happen? So we can go back here. So you see, we get the output and we see that it's in deployment state. And when it will be done, then we'll start executing simply we'll run case 6 with the load test. And I will show you this because we also seed the to-do applications with a bunch of fake items, and we do some actions to run all of that, right? Okay. This way. So you see Here it's in deployment. You see, it's started. That's great. And soon it will be green. And we'll see that here it's going to be okay. By the way, inside the pipeline, you have stages. Qovery takes care of deploying the application in parallel when there is no dependencies. Okay, so if you have a bunch of applications, then it's really built and deployed in parallel. Here, since we have just one database and one application, it's not relevant, and we have a specific order, but just to mention. So you see, good. We have our environment that is ready, and now we are running the end-to-end test. Okay, so it's downloading case 6, installing it, Qovery as well, so that's great. And it's going to run and execute basically the end-to-end test. If I go back to my pull request, I want to show you that you see, so the workflow is adding also the URLs and the different elements of the services that are inside our environment. So meaning that if you're a developer, you don't want to connect to Qovery to start to look around. Maybe you want just to get access to the different services right from the pull request. And here, that's exactly what happened. I can even open, you see, my application that is running in end-to-end test mode. So K6 has seeded the database and the to-do application. So that's why you see a bunch of IDs that are generated, so items. And we can even access all of that from directly the pull request. So that's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. Thanks, Hugo. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yes. So what happens next? Okay, so we are running the test. So you see it's taking some time. Yes. Then after that, we can just close the pull request. You see, or merge the pull request, and then the flow that will be executed will be this one. So it will be just basically this one, as I mentioned. So what will happen? GitHub Actions, we have a workflow that will be executed, and this one will just trigger the teardown of this environment. So Qovery is just one command where we say Qovery environment delete, done. You see, we don't even need to watch and wait for the end of that. Qovery takes care of that, handle all of that, so you don't pay for your GitHub Action pipeline because you are waiting for a response and then it costs you money. You can just basically let Qovery tearing down different environments and releasing all the resources. So if I go back here, okay, so I'm going to wait just the end of the pipeline, but I just wanted to show you that we have this GitHub workflow, which is the destroy one. Okay, so the destroy, so when the pull request is closed, then what we do, again, we download the CLI. By the way, you can use directly the container. The Qovery CLI is also available inside the container, so you don't need to download it this way. Okay, you can cache. It's just for the demo purpose. Okay, but basically here, what I'm doing is just running Qovery environment delete, and with the name of the environment, and that's it. I put like a -w, but as I mentioned, you don't need to wait for the end of that because Qovery handles everything. Okay. Yes. So let's do it together just to complete the demo. So you see the tests are running, and maybe I can just explain K6, some stuff that I'm doing. So here on K6, what I'm doing. So K6 is an open source framework that you can use to run your load test stuff that is done and published by Grafana Labs. Okay, so it's pretty convenient. It's written in JavaScript. Okay, and basically you have a few functions that you can declare to execute what you have to do. Okay, you have a specific syntax and specific modules that you can use, but it was pretty straightforward. And what I'm doing inside my test here, I have stages where I execute for durations of 5 minutes. I'm simulating a ramp up of like 1 to 100 users over 5 minutes. So what happens is just basically I'm flooding and sending a bunch of requests, simulating like those users, and I expect to get like a 201 because I'm inserting some data. So it's the setup what, but this is the function that is executed to get the information. So I expect to have a good response rate. And what we get is that at the end of the execution, we get a full report. So we can see how our application has behaved during the testing flow. So I go back to my end-to-end testing. So we're waiting for that. You see, it takes that takes some time because it's 5 minutes. So we have to wait, but it's almost done. I think we have at we are at 5 minutes and 20-ish seconds. So it's good. We are going to wait. I just want to show you the report because that's the beauty of you just fire and forget, you trigger all of that, you come back, then it's done, you have the report, it's perfect. Like you can just move on, focus on something else during the time that you have like everything that is run. And here really the benefits of those ephemeral environments is you pay only the time that you use those environments, right? Because at the end, under the hood, Qovery is a product that runs on your cloud account, spin up resources. So if you have like containers, databases, a bunch of different elements that are spin up, it's orchestrating all of that. So obviously you have to pay for those resources. And that's why we provide you also the ability to really simply stop or delete, just tear down those environments. Oh, you see, it's done. Oh, yes, it's green. Good. We can go back, and here you see, BIM. We have our end-to-end test report. So we can see that we have sent, so the average is of a request is 86 milliseconds. At the 95 percentile, we are at 92 milliseconds. So you see, we have no fade. So all the requests have succeeded. It's more than 220K requests that has been sent. So you see, you have all the information, and that's pretty convenient right from the pull request. So now my environment actually it's still running. Okay, so I just need, so you see my environment is still running here, but if I just close or merge this pull request, I can just close it. What will happen? Boom. You have the flow that is going to be executed. Again, the workflow. And the environment is going to be deleted. So it's the time that it takes to GitHub to just trigger the flow probably. Yeah, it takes some time maybe. Yes, this is the flow. So it's now in progress. You see, destroy and clean up. If I go here, you see, boom, I have no longer my environment. My environment has disappeared. So you have the guarantee that all the resources have been released by Qovery, basically. Okay, so now it's done. And it's good. That's it. I'm happy because the demo, the full demo, live demo, you never know how the things are going to happen, just work. So that's great. Yes, that's great. So just to summarize, because we are running out of time, it's already like the end. Again, you can find all this step-by-step guide inside this article. I will just drop down the link below the video, but basically if you type end-to-end testing ephemeral environments, Qovery, GitHub Actions, you will find that article. So everything that I've described inside this demo, you can find them into this. It's like explained step by step. I do explain everything. So that's great. But just to summarize, so end-to-end testing ephemeral environments are really like interesting for companies that wants to save money over tests, obviously, because you don't have like one static or multiple static environments that are used to run your test. Here you can really spin up a new environment dynamically for the testing purpose, and it's running in a total isolation from the other, like a compute, so your team can really work in a better way. You can run and execute all of that. Once it's done, you can really configure the way with the flow that you want, because you see it's integrated inside the GitHub action. You can do whatever you want. So basically, okay, you have the full control. You have multiple elements, so GitHub Actions, you have Qovery for the environment management, you have a K6 for the load test. You can use whatever, you plug them all together and it just works. And it's really interesting for like your team, obviously, because if you have multiple departments, multiple teams working on different features, they need to have like a fully isolated environment just to run the test, like with the correct configurations, then they can do that in parallel. There is no problem, right? So that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed. I will share the link again from the end-to-end testing environment. And if you have any question, because it's recorded also, just feel free to drop down your question, even if it's a recorded session that you're watching, because I will see your question and respond to those questions. But you also have obviously my email and our website. If you want to give a try to Qovery, we have a freemium version. So you can use it, you can play with it, and we'll be super happy to have your feedback. I wish you a good day and thanks for watching.